Brutal Planet Magazine.
This is Hulk Hoffman of Video. Welcome to Brutal Planet Magazine.
And this is JT from Syra, and welcome to Brutal Planet Magazine.
Hey, this is Nick Reese from Joyous Wolf, and this is Brutal Planet Magazine.
We are Thunder Mother, and welcome to Brutal Planet Magazine.
Tom Banglund here. Just want to welcome you guys to Brutal Planet Magazine.
Kevin from the Heavy Metal Shop. Welcome to Brutal Planet. Hello, Metalheads. I'm Nils Patrick Johansson, known from Lions Hair and Outdoors. Welcome to Brutal Planet Magazine.
Greetings and salutations, Brutal Planet. We are here live today we're going to have Igor Amadeus Cavalera in just a minute. And just to kind of debrief you on that, Igor Amadeus Cavalera is Max Cavalera's son, not his brother, Igor. And they have a project together called Go Ahead and Die that is heavy, it's badass. And so we're going to talk to him a little bit about that and, hopefully ask him some other questions about stuff that's going on. Coming up this week, we have some pretty killer guests for you. Actually, later today or tomorrow, I don't know when we're going to run this, but we're going to be talking to Wednesday 13. They're doing a Murder Dolls reunion, and so we'll probably pick his brain about that. And then tomorrow, we got Sharon from Within Temptation coming on. And that should be interesting conversation. We're pretty limited because she's very busy. She's obviously got a lot of interviews to do. So we only have, a few minutes of time with her tomorrow. But that should be an interesting conversation. They, of course, have a new record coming out. And I've heard some of the previews of that, and it sounds pretty amazing. So when we talk to Igor today, if you have any questions and you want to throw them into the comments of the chat, please feel empowered to do so. And we'll go ahead and ask those questions for you. There's a lot going on. I don't know if we covered a little bit of it, but if you've seen the pictures from Power Trip this past weekend, there was this massive concert out here in California with basically it was Maiden, AC/DC, Metallica, Guns N' Roses, every legendary metal band you could think of. I just saw a photo in my feed of the dudes from Tool with Metallica, basically which was really cool to see. I also noticed in the photo that Maynard has a bunch of tats, and I didn't realize just because of that song Enema by Tool where he says fuck your tattoos. I didn't think he was a tattoo guy, but he has several tattoos. So I was surprised to see that because I don't know why. I think I've seen him on Joe Rogan before and he's had tattoos for a long time, but that was like one of the things that stuck out to me in that particular photo. So I already listed everybody we got coming up this week. Let's talk about some news items right now. What's going on in heavy metal? So if you've seen our site recently, we've covered quite a bit of, there's a lot of tours starting up. Ministry is doing a tour with Frontline Assembly and Gary Newman that starts next month. It's a nationwide U.S. tour. We've got okay. So there's a lot of just give me just a second. I'm gonna find something. Okay, so yesterday we talked to this homie from the band. Now I'm like drawing blanks. The band is called Fake Figures, and the guitar player Travis Miguel is from Atreyu. And that was an interesting interview because Fake Figures is a side project of his. and Atreyu is kind of his main gig. So, but that band, the quality of the music is fantastic, and it's one of those bands where I was asked to cover the show or to cover the band, and I'd never really listened to them. And jumping into their music, it's very good stuff. And it's one of those instances where it's a band I'd never heard of, and I was very, very impressed with the stuff that they've put together. Just a unique style, kind of a like almost progressive metal with melodic vocals, and just really well done stuff. So this morning I made sure to confirm that we were going to be talking to Igor today with his people, and I was assured that that was the case. So I'm going to give him 15 minutes. I usually do a 15-minute rule to show up. He has the login and everything. And, if he does not, we will probably shut this down again. I think so. The last time we were supposed to interview Igor before, and the last time there was, I believe, a big miscommunication because I was told a certain time, and when I got on the call, I had realized that I had an email that the call had already happened, or that I guess he was misinformed about the way that the scheduling went, and so I don't really fault him. I mean, we're doing this through intermediaries, so I'm going to just follow up again real quick and see. So I'm going to show you real quick just a bit of comedy that I think is good or funny, since I need to kill some time. So I've been watching a lot. Have you ever seen the show Kill Tony? If you haven't, I'm going to shill for it right now because it's awesome. And basically, to give you kind of an idea of what it is, it's a almost like an American Idol, like a low-key American Idol for comedy. And what they do, though, is at the beginning of every show, people put their names in a hat, and they draw names from this hat. And the people that, the people that get picked out have to get up on stage and do a minute of comedy. And sometimes they kill it. Sometimes they're really funny. And then other times they're not funny and they get roasted. And either way, it's really entertaining, it's especially entertaining when they fail, because it's funny. And then they, do these interviews. But anyway, Tony Hinchcliffe, the guy who hosts it, has his own comedy special called Making Friends, which I won't get into right now because there's a lot of like really offensive stuff in it that would hurt people's feelings. But he does this bit about same-day pickup that I thought was hilarious. So while we're waiting, I'm going to share that with you right now. So check this out.
Unacceptable. The whole world's coming to an end. That's what's happening. You know this, right? I just saw a commercial yesterday for it was like Home Depot or something, I can't remember. They're like, now we have next day delivery or same day in store, that day pickup. Same day in store pickup. We've always had that. That's called shopping. But that's how stupid people around us are. Imagine how many idiots you know saw that commercial and they're like, no! Wow, same day in-store pickup! Whoa, I don't even have to wait for the delivery! We're surrounded by idiots. Same day in-store pickup. Look, Let's face it, if you don't have Amazon Prime, you're not a real fucking American.
My mic is muted. What am I doing? So that's hilarious. Same day in-store pickup. I come from marketing, and I think that shit is very funny. And we got Igor with us now. So let's bring him on and talk to Igor. Igor,
How's it going?
how you doing, sir?
I'm good. I'm in this beautiful green room in Seattle right now. So sorry about the lighting's kind of crazy. It's like a bright red room.
No worries, man. No worries. With lighting be damned. Thank you for making it this time. I think last time there was a little bit of a miscommunication, and so we missed you last time. So I appreciate you coming back for a second.
No worries.
attempt.
Yeah, I mean, doing these on the road, sometimes you're like trying to do it on the bus and it's moving around and Wi-Fi's cutting in and out and shit. So yeah, no, this works perfectly.
Awesome, man. Well, I've been listening to the stuff, the Go Ahead and Die stuff, and it's great. It's fantastic stuff. So I got a few questions for you. Hopefully you have a few minutes to chat.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, man. Fire away.
So I like to start usually with a band origin story, and obviously your circumstances are a bit unique, but tell the kind of the origin story of the band, however you want to tell it. Go back as far as you want to go. How did the project come about?
Yeah, I mean, I guess going as far back as we could would be like 2018. That was when me and, Max, my dad, started talking about it. But it wouldn't be till 2020 that we'd actually do anything on it, because the scheduling issues and him being in 5 very, prominent, successful metal bands,
Yeah.
the pandemic happened and, everything canceled for the year. And we, all of a sudden, our entire industry was gone. We had all this time at home. We decided that was the time to do it. We were like, when are we ever going to have, 3, 4, 5 months? Who knows how long this thing's going to be? Back then we didn't know how long the pandemic would last, so we were like, let's take advantage of this and do that record we've been talking about. That was the spoken word birth of it, I guess you could say, and from there we just started demoing. We did the demos on this really old Korg, like 12 track. My dad is not a technical savvy person, so we did things pretty caveman style. We started on that. We had this old drum machine from the 90s, same one he used for like Nail Bomb and stuff like that. And before we knew it, we were like crushing songs. You know what I mean? We had a half an album in like a month, I think.
That's awesome.
And then from there the band was just blossomed into what it is now. We're on our second record and finally starting to plan some touring and things like that. So it took a few years to get going, but better late than never.
Awesome. So COVID kind of helped birth the project to some extent.
Oh, absolutely. It was making the best of a bad situation.
Mm-hmm.
And just taking advantage of that time.
Yeah. So another question I'd have for you is, how did you guys come up with the name? Does it come from anything specific, or is it something that you just?
It was actually it's kind of a goofy story, honestly. We didn't have a name. We were coming up with ideas, this and that, and one of us was thinking like, why don't we look up like how to tell someone to like F off and other languages, So I think we started with Portuguese, but it was a little too hard to pronounce. Looked up some other languages, and we came across like at least the Google translation. I've talked to a couple people. I don't think it's actually real, but the Google translation for Japanese translated to "Go Ahead and Die."
Okay.
That was kind of like telling someone to bug off. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
get out of my face type thing. And the first time we said it out loud, I don't know, it just kind of clicked, and we were like, "That's kind of sick," And we wanted it to be a name that we could use as an acronym as well, kind of like the old school punk bands like GBH and MDC and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
So GAAD sounded cool to us. And, you know, yeah, it was just a random thing. I think we were just sitting on Google Translate, like typing in, you know, go F yourself in different languages. And for some reason, the Japanese one came up as go ahead and die. And we were like, that's sick. But we actually I did an interview for Japan a couple weeks ago, and I told that story, and the Japanese journalist was like, yeah, I don't think that's that accurate, but that's cool that you found it that way, and I was like,
Yeah.
however it works,
That is awesome. And then the acronym is God. It's like
Yeah,
God.
exactly. Yeah. Like someone from New England saying God.
Right, a Boston accent. Yeah, I'm gonna park the car.
Yeah, exactly.
So I was supposed to have my colleague Joey with me today, but he couldn't make it. I think he had some issues with his kids or something. Something happened. He had some kind of an emergency. So he sent me some questions, and one of the questions he sent me was, "What was your childhood like growing up with Max and Gloria as parents and being immersed in the metal world?"
It was interesting to say the least. I mean, I really enjoyed music and really got into that stuff at a young age. So I think I was a little bit more well adjusted, I guess you could say, towards it. But that made me a little less adjusted to doing regular things like going to school and listening to my teachers and getting along with my friends. Those things were a little bit harder for me. But going on tour and stuff like that was supernatural. And, just being at shows in general, I got into it at a very young age. And, it's a weird thing to explain, because I see my dad on stage and I understood the, music business, whatever, the ins and outs of it. But at the same time, my dad was the one who'd take me to school. My dad was the one who would talk to my teachers when they would call, my mom as well, both of them. So I think it's hard for people to imagine, they have this image of my dad on stage all the time and playing and in music videos and this and that. It's kind of hard to imagine him sitting in a principal's office because, I got maybe busted with something I shouldn't have had or doing something that I shouldn't have been doing. But I mean, all in all, they were good parents, and, they would bring us on the road to try and keep us in the loop of things and not be gone all the time. That was probably the hardest thing about being a kid and having parents that would do that. They were gone tons of times out of the year. And, but we did a lot of domestic things as well that I think people forget about. He taught me how to drive. My mom taught me how to cook and do things like that around the house. And, I think we're more normal than people might assume. We're just human beings as well. But at the same time, yeah, it was a little weird. Like most of my friends' parents were like mechanics or plumbers or landscapers, very like blue collar jobs. And then they'd come over to my house and see all these records and weird stuff from different countries and things like that. And they're like, what do your parents do? And I was like, yeah, don't worry about it. They're cool. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
But that was definitely, it was a balance between, very, very strange and completely normal stuff that anybody else would do, and
That's awesome.
that's what I try to rend people, is that they're just people too. So despite the touring and doing all that stuff was awesome. We did your basic everyday childhood things as well,
Yeah. I feel like the more I talk to bands too, I mean, I've been doing this pretty heavy for the last year, and being in a band really is kind of a blue collar thing. Unless you're like Michael Jackson or like Madonna or something, or, some like Taylor Swift, like being in a band, like it's a hustle, it's a grind. Like you got to put out a record, you got to tour, you got mouths to feed, you got tour, your sound people and all that, stage people and all that kind of stuff. So there is a lot more parallels, I think, to being a mechanic or a teacher, being in a band than a lot of people would realize.
Oh, definitely. I think, like I said, I think it's easy for people to assume that it's like champagne and bubble baths and all of that backstage, but in reality, it's not. Touring is a little harder on your body and your mind and everything than people think. Um, just waking up in the morning and not having a bathroom, not having anywhere to wash up after 3 or 4 days, 5 days of playing shows, things like that. Pushing gear, moving stuff. It's manual labor. You know what I mean? Selling merch is the same as working in a retail job. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, there are similarities and certain things that, it definitely does have in common with the rest of the world, even if it doesn't get the credit that way, or if it doesn't even get viewed that way, I guess you could say. There's definitely work that goes into it.
Are you the oldest of your siblings?
No, I'm actually the youngest.
Oh, okay.
Youngest of 7. Yeah.
I was trying to figure out, because I saw Soulfly years ago, and one of Max's kids came out and rapped the like Fred Durst part.
Yeah.
Was that you, or was that
No,
one of the
no,
other kids?
that was my older brother Richie,
Okay.
who he has a very good band now called Insight that's on the road with us. On this, we're doing the Cavalera Morbid Visions tour right now.
Awesome.
But that's him. Yeah, and we're all pretty musically inclined.
Yeah.
Even if we don't play, most of us understand the business side of it and how things work and stuff like that. So it was my goal as a kid to learn both. I was like, I want to learn how to play and how to keep the wheels rolling, so to speak.
Yeah, that's so invaluable right now because of the way that things broke in the music industry, right? Like with the iPod, and now it's like we have this conversation a lot where it's like it's kind of a double-edged sword, because the technology is there now for anyone to be able to produce and distribute music, but there's so much of it. It's hard to, like, you really have to be able to, like, it's a fire hose. You got to, like, how do I find, the best stuff?
Yeah, navigating it is much different nowadays, and once again, I mean, it has some similarities. To me, there's not that much of a difference of scrolling through a streaming service as to looking through records in a crate in a record store. It's just a different format. And as you said, there's just more of it nowadays, so you have to navigate a little more consciously, I guess. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but there's such a abundance of everything that you have to kind of sift through it and look for the best stuff and look for good stuff and try to get through the masses and masses of bands that exist nowadays, to find those hidden gems.
Totally. But having that experience of the business side and the musician side sets you up to be in a position where, like the way that the world is now, you can do pretty much anything you want. So,
yeah, I mean, it's crazy what you can accomplish, and you like, you're not just guaranteed to do it, just because this is what my folks did. It's not like I was just born understanding it. I had to pay attention and ask so many questions, and sometimes ask questions that they didn't want to answer. Maybe I was getting adult a little too fast when I was a preteen, so it was definitely something that I took a real interest in. And I think, no matter what my background was, me as a person, I would have gotten into it one way or another, and yeah, in this day and age, it is kind of cool to have this knowledge and to be able to understand these things and try and, navigate this digital world a little bit better, because it's a crazy time. And they had to roll with the punches too. When they started, it was tapes, cassettes, to records, to CDs, to digital, to streaming, and now whatever the next thing's going to be, who knows?
yeah,
Might be a microchip they put in your brain or some shit. Who knows?
they're already talking about that stuff.
It's definitely something that they had to figure out as they were going. And I was a kid growing up through that time, so I was figuring it out as well. and it wasn't guaranteed that I was going to get into this. It was a personal decision and a personal passion of mine.
Sure, that's awesome. So before, I don't want to spend too much time talking about your history and your family and stuff, but Joey had 2 questions for me, and
Yeah.
and then we'll move on. One was the Soulfly song Malambo. Is that your voice on the intro?
Yeah, that was me. I think I was like 6 years old then. So
Okay.
that was probably technically one of my first recordings.
He goes, I'm wondering if he has any recollection of recording that.
Just very faintly. I more remember them kind of like asking me to do it, or being like, can you, I guess that was something as a kid I would just say, like being goofy, like I just run in the room and like yell at or something. So, I kind of remember them being like, can you do this? And I didn't really understand. I was like, what? You just want me to, yell this in front of a microphone? And they were like, yeah, do it real quick. You know what I mean? I was like, okay, do it, I guess. But yeah, I was pretty young, so it's definitely hazy, fuzzy to try and remember it now. But yeah, that was probably one of my first, definitely first vocal recordings. That's for sure.
Awesome. Then the other question he had for me was your involvement on the Soulfly song Mother of Dragons with your dad and brothers. Was that something?
Yeah. I remember that was forget what record was that. Archangel, I think. I don't know. They're starting to all bleed together. But yeah,
right.
that was a fun song because that was 3 of my mom's kids kind of writing a song about her, not exactly directly, but sort of in a metaphorical way or whatever. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And that was really fun. Anytime getting to work on the Soulfly records has been really cool. Getting to write verses for it and do guest vocal type things. I think we played that live a couple of times in Europe back when that came out. I think that was like 2015 or 16 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, those have all been really fun songs. And yeah, and not exactly a direct way. It's sort of a song for our mom and all of us crazy dragons that she raised up. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I have 2 brothers myself, and like I totally relate. Mom is on a pedestal.
Exactly. And I mean, especially the fact that she's from the business side of everything for my dad since like 1990. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe he might not admit it, but probably wouldn't be doing what he's doing at this level and everything that he is now without meeting her. You know what I mean? She really helped them break through, get into the spotlight. She was already a very well-versed manager at that time. She had managed Sacred Reich and Atrophy, Flotsam and Jetsam. She was working with Jason Newsted when he was like 15.
Wow.
She owned a club in Phoenix. Yeah. Like back in the early, so she was already very successful, musician, manager. And, she definitely helped them get into the light, so that's like, it was cool to do songs that are sort of a tribute to her and everything that she's done, because yeah, without her, they would have had a hard time breaking out in America,
Mm-hmm. I feel like it's a similar dynamic to Sharon Osbourne. Ozzy obviously already had success with Black Sabbath and stuff, but Sharon kind of helped take his career to the next level.
Yeah, definitely. And it's even one of those things with the old Sepultura, where I think it's become sensationalized a little bit, where people think they were this huge band by Beneath the Remains and this and that, but in reality, I think they only did one American tour during Beneath the Remains, and there was like 20 people at each show. And it's funny because, a lot of people forget that, they don't realize that they were up and coming when those albums were coming out. And people really loved them, and it was sort of a cult following thing, but, they didn't get sensationalized until a couple years later,
Man, that's something I've never thought of, because the first time I heard Sepultura, I heard Inner Self on like literally college radio, like public
Yeah.
radio. And then we used to listen to a show called Into the Pit, like late at night, where some
Mhm.
DJ would just pull cuts. That's how I heard Sepultura before even Arise came out. So that makes total sense. Like they were kind of they were an underground like cult thing.
Yeah, for sure. You know, I mean, they had some attention, and they were, you know, they were getting signed to, it was Road Racer back then, not Roadrunner. But you know, yeah, it took a while, you know, and it was definitely some of the connections that my mom had, you know. By that point, you know, Sacred Reich had toured with Motorhead and done Dynamo and done all these things. She already had all these connections, and she basically, you know, put them into the same treatment that she had done with her other bands already. And yeah, you know, next thing you knew, Arise came out, and it seemed like they got a much more national you know, following. And
Definitely next
you know,
level.
I thank her for that. And even the stuff, she still works to this day on all of our bands. She's on the road with us right now. Also the only manager I know that goes on tour with her bands.
That's amazing.
Most guys sit in the office and do everything from 9 to 5. You know, she's actually out on the road working 12-hour days with all of us, crew, band members, everyone included, you know. So yeah, I mean, to loop back to it, yeah, Mother of Dragons was sort of a tribute song to her and all of the amazing things she's done to keep us going and keep us on the road and keep the music coming out.
And as an artist, it's so huge to have someone that you can trust handling that side of things, so you can focus on creating and making music.
Exactly. Yeah. You know, and she's taught me a lot about the you know, business side of things, to where, you know, I feel like I'll be able to handle my own things on my own, you know what I mean, down the road when hopefully her and my dad retire at some point in a few years to just travel and have fun. Because I mean, yeah, they've been touring and doing this
at it a long time,
up for 30 plus years, you know.
Yeah,
but they also love it, you know, so it's
sure.
It's a love work kind of situation.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully they wouldn't have been doing it this long if they didn't, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I remember I saw like that Soulfly show I was talking about. Gloria was there. I remember that very well. I remember the family was there. So I always thought that was so cool.
Yeah, I mean, that was important to them, you know, was to try and keep things as connected and everybody included as much as they could. You know, it was definitely not easy for them to leave us kids at home as it was for us to see them go, you know.
Sure.
And you know, I think they did a good job. You know, some other kids might have been resentful for their parents being gone, or you know what I mean, have trauma, or you know, daddy and mommy issues or whatever. But I always kind of understood that this is what they love to do. And, you know, sometimes you sacrifice things for what you love and what you really put your heart into, you know, and I never really held it against them.
You've obviously got like a good perspective.
For sure. Yeah. You know, and I mean, I apply it to my own life. You know, I have a girlfriend and no kids, but cats and stuff at home that, you know, I miss very dearly, but we all understand that this is what I love to do. So, let me do it or I'm going to go crazy kind of thing. You know? You know, when you love something, let them do what they want to do, you know?
Totally.
For me, that's touring and making music and writing, you know?
And that's a good transition back to the Go Ahead and Die stuff. So how do you guys write this stuff? Do you write the riffs? Is a lot of the riffs yours, or like, do you guys get together in a room and bang stuff out, or how do you usually put these songs together? Because one of the questions Joey had was who wrote the riffs in the song Tumors. That's one of his favorite.
Yeah. I want to say that Tumors, I was working on while Max was on tour. Cause yeah, this record was a little bit different than the first one. The first one, you know, we did during COVID. So I think, you know, both of us were there in the room coming up with it for all of it. The second record is a little bit different. He was on tour. I was at home. I was feeling a little stir crazy. I was, you know, I was on my own. I wasn't living with my girlfriend at the time and whatever, you know, and I had all this time and I guess you could say loneliness and things like that going on. And I was like, I'm just going to start writing this thing. I was like, we can obviously change stuff and, Max, you can bring your input to it when you get back and this and that. But, I was like, I'm going to start doing this, and I think the very first song that I wrote was the opener, Desert Carnage. But yeah, I mean, Tumors was one of the first ones we worked on. I think I had the idea for the chorus actually first. It's more of like death metal noodly kind of riff. And then we put it to, I think my dad came up with that opening one, the real slappy, like riff, But yeah, the writing process is interesting, because it's just sort of like, if I have an idea, we'll just bring it to the table and see what we like about it. And if he has one, he'll just bring it to the table and see where it fits and everything. So it's a little bit of, just constructing. And, at one point I had like 100 videos of riffs on my phone, but they weren't whole songs. So it was like, we definitely sat and sifted through a bunch of these riffs and found tempos that went together and found riffs that sounded kind of like more like a song than separate ideas, and just put some together that way. Then the one thing that was the same as the first record is once we had these, skeletons or whatever I call them, we did the demos the same way on that old Korg 12 track and that old beat up 90s drum machine. And, once we had demos, then it was kind of like, okay, these are the songs. This is what we're going to record. This is what we're going to go into the studio with. But yeah, I'd say I wrote a bit more on this record. The second one, with him being busy on the road, it was just kind of natural. And on both records, I wrote probably like 80% of the lyrics. My dad is self-proclaimed that he hates writing lyrics, and I'm a bookworm. I write stories and stuff outside of music, like fiction and horror and stuff like that. So I like words. I like writing lyrics. I like coming up with that stuff. So that was actually a good balance between us. He was like, I'll just scream whatever you write, man, because you come up with cool stuff. So it was nice. It's like, it's not often that I write something and someone's actually just really excited to scream it,
Are you doing any of the vocals?
Yeah. Vocals are split as well. Yeah.
That's what I thought, because I was listening to the stuff and I was like, I can tell Max's scream, as a long-time Sepultura and Soulfly fan. But then I was like, that must be Igor. That's badass. You have a hard-ass voice too.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, I started doing vocals when I was like 15. Never really something that I planned, but it was, when I was in a little garage band or whatever you want to call it, all my friends were too intimidated to use the microphone and be the vocalist. So I was like, all right, if you guys are all sissies, like, I'll do it thing. And I had no idea. And I sounded terrible for a few years while I was figuring it out, but, now it's been 12 or 13 years that I've been doing it. It's starting to sound pretty good. But yeah, the vocals, I think the dual vocals on the Go Ahead and Die record are really cool.
Yeah.
And some people have actually said it's kind of hard to differentiate who's doing what. And, our voices are almost kind of similar at certain points.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was, like I said, I mean, all in all, it was fun to work with him on it and everything down to the guitars, vocals, bass, drums, it was an enjoyable experience just coming up with everything.
Yeah, I can hear the difference, I feel like, but there might be points where, you guys are related. You're gonna have similarities, of course.
No, definitely. And we're doing a lot of the, dynamic vocals where one of us is going, really, really low, one of us is going really high.
Yeah.
And yeah, sometimes we would just switch. We would just be like, okay, you did all the lows on that last song, so you're just only going to do highs on this one and stuff like that. It was fun. It was really creative. It was really just spastic and natural. Some ideas were just right on the spot, kind of like, whoa, why didn't we think of that? Let's do it this way, type stuff. And, it was all in all just a good thing. I'm really proud of it. I think it's some of the heaviest stuff that I've ever done. And my dad is like, he's kind of proto death metal at the start, and even Nick had some of those kind of like crusty, thrashy vibes. But even he's told me, he's like, man, I think this is like some of the most brutal stuff I've worked on. And for someone who's done I want to say upwards of 25 records or so, you know what I mean? That's saying quite a lot.
I totally forgot. You reminded me because of the multiple vocalists. I started thinking about the Killer Be Killed stuff. I forgot your dad was on that stuff too. Both those records are incredible.
That's what I'm saying. He's one of the busiest people in metal and music in general. I mean, he between Soulfly, Cavalera, Killer Be Killed, now Go Ahead and Die, all these different things, and then all these variations of different things. Cavalera doing these old Sepultura records and doing stuff like that. It is hard to lock him down sometimes and get him in the studio, get him in the rehearsal room, but it's worth it when it comes together and we're doing it.
Yeah, I was really happy to see him reunite with his brother on the Cavalera conspiracy stuff, because that those classic Sepultura records are some of my favorite. Roots and Chaos AD, and of course Arise and stuff. So it's cool that they're back together, working together again.
Yeah, it's a good lesson at the end of the day.
So what I noticed, like a lot of the lyrical themes, are you writing about like current events at all, or like what are some of the types of themes that inspire you to write the lyrics for Go Ahead and Die?
It's a mixture of things for sure. I would say it's definitely one part world events and stuff that I just read about. Even whether it's like on my phone or in a book or newspaper or whatever, it's definitely one part that, and then it's one part personal experiences for sure. I just think as an artist, it's difficult to not write about your own life, and things that you're going through. And sometimes I kind of just blend those two, and it can be a little hard to even tell the difference of what's what. But this particular album, in my opinion, or at least when I was writing it, I was like, I want to sort of focus on like mental health, or I guess you could say the lack of mental health nowadays, declining mental health. And I was going through my own things. I was having a depressive episode. You know what I mean? There was stuff going on in my life that was bringing me down. And that album just kind of ended up being the outlet for me, to talk about things, to, talk about liars and backstabbers and feeling like the low piece of scum on the earth. It's not something anybody wants to admit or wants to be honest about, but, I don't see any point in lying about it. I was in a pretty low place and going through some stuff. And I mean, that album actually just really helped lift me out of it. Getting to write about it and getting to tell some of my feelings was huge. It was like therapy almost in a way. So take that, personal experiences, and then take these random, crazy, scary things that I would read about, like what inspired like Desert Carnage and Drugocop and songs like that were real world experiences. And, all of a sudden you have this monster of a record,
Sometimes art, I feel like, can almost be like a spigot you can like use to vent all that poison out of your system, like, empty that, or a vent, get all the negative shit out, whether it's drawing it out or writing lyrics or playing a guitar and screaming into a mic.
Yeah, 100%. And it's kind of a double entendre, the album being called Unhealthy Mechanisms, because that name just dives into the unhealthy ways that we deal with life. But it's sort of, I don't know, double-edged sword or whatever you want to call it, because that making that record was actually the healthy way to get out of it. But I'm talking about all the unhealthy ways that you get out of it, so it was an interesting, almost a little bit of irony to it, or whatever you want to call it,
Yeah, like a dichotomy kind of.
Yeah, exactly.
That's super cool. So another question I like to ask people, and this one's a little bit tougher with you because you grew up in a musical family, but who are artists that really inspired you as a young musician? Like what, like, you know, obviously your dad is a huge factor, but were there other musicians that were a big influence on you that you went, wow, you saw this guy and were like, I gotta get into this, I gotta play?
Oh yeah, I mean, you know, I mean, I heard music on my own growing up, you know, from my friends and from movies and TV shows, you know, just like anybody else, you know. So you know, some of the, you know, I guess I could give you sort of a progression of it, you know, because that's how it happened to me. But yeah, you know, at the start, it was definitely, you know, early heavy metal and punk bands, you know, like Sabbath and even AC/DC and stuff like that. To, you know, on the punk side, I was getting into like Ramones and the Clash and stuff like that. You know, so as a guitar player, you know, like Tony Iommi and you know, Johnny Ramone and people like that were huge to me. You know what I mean? Like I saw those guys and I was like, dude, they're badass. I want to do that, you know? And, you know, down the line, I started getting into more extreme stuff. I started getting into, you know what I mean? Metal, you know, I don't know how else to put it. Extreme metal, doom metal, thrash metal, stuff like that. And, you know, some of the people that were huge for me then were, you know, like Tom G. Warrior from Celtic Frost, you know, J.K. Broderick from Godflesh. You know, the time I heard Like Rats, I was like, this is the heaviest band to ever exist. You know what I mean? And then, you know, a little more personal, you know, a band that had toured with Sepultura and actually who had worked on Nail Bomb with my dad was Alex Newport, was a huge influence for me.
He was from, was it Fudge Tunnel?
Yeah, from Fudge Tunnel.
Yeah.
You know, so that was a huge influence for me, and really just that's what kind of got me more into extreme stuff, I guess you could say. You know, because I'm actually more inclined on the like sludgy side of things. You know, I like a lot of the psychedelic kind of metal, like Neurosis and acid, stuff like that.
What was the second band you said?
Acid Bath.
Acid Bath. That's a band that not a lot of people talk about, that is so fucking insanely good.
Oh yeah, for sure. You know, I mean, and that was you know, that stuff was super influential to me because it was so weird and so like I said, you know, psychedelic and noisy almost, and but also had these awesome melodies and things going on. And yeah, you know, I think that was like thanks to like Fudge Tunnel and Godflesh and even like Sleep, you know, stuff like that I heard when I was a teenager really opened up this whole world to me where I was like, whoa, metal doesn't have to just be, you know, Dungeons and Dragons type stuff, which I mean, I love, don't get me wrong, the early stuff that had that kind of, but it kind of opened me up to, you know, like psychological things in metal and, you know, talking about like spirits and nature and, you know, the law of order and things like that. You know what I mean? I was like, this is cool stuff, you know?
Acid Bath's lyrical content is like some of the most twisted and brutal of any of those bands too. Like,
you know,
they have some very pretty songs as well.
For sure, you know, and yeah, being brutal and twisted, but it's kind of poetic and nice at the same time, you know. And yeah, you know, stuff like that was huge for me. And you know, nowadays most of my favorite metal bands are more on that sludgy, weird, experimental kind of side, you know.
Yeah, that's a good transition to my next question, which is, what are you listening to right now?
Yeah, I mean, lately, I've kind of fallen back on some favorites. You know, I mean, I listen to a lot of like Kylesa and you know, like Dark Castle and stuff like that. Honestly, a lot of like women fronted bands. You know, guitar players, these chicks who can rip and sing very good and stuff like that. That's some of my favorite stuff. But on that same end, I listen to a lot of like goth, like synthwave, dark wave, post punk, all of that stuff. You know, that I think there's a huge scene of that going on right now, and to me, it's kind of fits in with metal because it's very dark and very, you know, very weird all over the place. But there's a lot of good punk rock coming out too. Like, you know, I've been into this band Bib and like Warthog and like stuff like that as well. So yeah, it's like it's everything from sludge metal to punk to almost dancey goth kind of stuff. Everything in between.
Have you ever heard of these guys? Modern Life is War.
No, I haven't. I'll have to check it out.
They're kind of like a hardcore punk band, but they're like one of those underground bands. They have a record called Witness that is like absolutely one of my favorites of all time.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'm always looking for suggestions. I'm always trying to keep my ear to the ground and find new noise. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Kylesa is a band that I've heard mentioned a lot, but I've never really listened to them. So I'm gonna have to check that out too.
Oh, they're one of my favorite bands of all time. Completely, they're really a band without boundaries and without a specific sound. Once again, it's everything from punk influences to psychedelic experimental stuff to crushing heavy doomy stuff, everything in between. I
Wow.
can't recommend that band enough. They really just push the boundaries, and they really don't just stick to one style. It's every type of thing you can imagine. So
I
yeah,
love that.
check them out. One of my favorites.
We probably have similar trajectories in the sense that I grew up listening to bands like Faith No More and Mr. Bungle and then heavier bands like Pantera and Megadeth and stuff. And so it's kind of like in nowadays, I feel like there's a lot more of that kind of like everything is golden type thing where it's like there's a lot more incorporation of different styles in metal. And I also didn't like bands like Iron Maiden and Priest when I was a kid. I was like, I don't like that. Oh, I don't like that. But now that I'm older, I love Maiden. Maiden's one of my favorite bands. So same thing, like the Dungeons and Dragons-y stuff. I was kind of like, yeah, I'm more like towards like Pantera and like
Right.
these heavier, like kind of just like brutal or more brutal bands. But as I've gotten older, I've gained an appreciation for some of that more like the power metal style.
Yeah, and I think your appreciation can change, and I think certain things that, I mean, even like your taste buds, there's something you maybe didn't like to eat when you were a kid, but you actually like now. I think music is kind of the same way. And it was kind of the same for me when I was a teenager. I was a little more like, let's find the dark stuff. Let's find this and that. But,
Acid baths.
The biggest Dungeons and Dragons nerd ever. All I did was play Zelda and Gauntlet and games like when I was
Final
a kid.
Fantasy.
It was funny because I think it took a while for it to click. I was like, wait, I do like this stuff. I am
totally
the rings. I was like, this is cool stuff. Just give it the time of day. Take a step back and appreciate it, and instead of being an edgy teenager.
Yeah. I just didn't understand it. And then I saw Maiden and Halford live and I went, holy crap, these guys are incredible. These guys are like in their 60s and they're like have more energy than bands I've seen that are like in their teens.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. You could take a step back and learn to appreciate anything if you give it the time of day,
Totally. The guy I talked to yesterday, he plays guitar for Atreyu and he has a project called Fake Figures that's killer. And he made such a great analogy. He's like, I look at music like food. It's like, I love Italian food, but I don't want to eat Italian food every day for every meal. Like sometimes I want to listen to something a little different,
Oh,
that's a good analogy.
And I think if you listen to more things, it's going to influence your music. And, if you source your material from a wider range of things, your music's going to be more interesting. If you're in a thrash band and you're only taking influence from other thrash bands, you're just going to sound like every other thrash band. And, if that's what you're going for, there's nothing wrong with it. But like I said, I'm just much more of a, experimental approach, be weird kind of approach. So to me, I'll write a metal song that was influenced by a desert rock song. I'll write a metal song that was influenced by 60s rock or surf rock or something like that. And you would never be able to tell, until you point it out and be like, well, check out this, this tremolo riff. That's just a surf rock riff, just with more distortion and a blast beat behind it instead. You know what I mean? yeah, I mean, I think that's what keeps things interesting, is just having a wide variety of stuff that you listen to, and a wide variety of open-mindedness, you know?
Yeah, totally. I personally look for bands that are doing something like out of the ordinary now, because there's so,
Yeah.
like we were saying earlier, there's so many bands. I'm like, who's doing something that sticks out, that's like way different or unique or new?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just to throw one out there, there's, this band I've been into is called Poison Ruin. They're definitely more like a punk, post-punk kind of band, but all their imagery is like Dungeons and Dragons stuff. Like it's total D&D, like poison trap kind of, thing. And I was like, that's so cool, because you never see punk bands really tapping into that
Fantasy.
style of imagery and lyrics and stuff like that.
Totally. Punk is usually political.
That's what I'm saying, so it was cool to see bands that are doing that crossover kind of thing. And even vice versa, like there's tons of electronic, like goth dark wave stuff, and they're starting to use like the death metal logos and stuff like their shirts, and I'm like, that's awesome. Like, I don't care. I'm the opposite of a gatekeeper. I'm like, you will listen, you will check out the things I like, you will get into it. So I think it's cool. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think these things should be exclusive. And I think if you want to have fun and, you make synthwave, but you want to have a death metal shirt, go for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And vice versa. You want to be in a punk band and just write about, folklore and legends and magic and stuff like that, then go for it. Like, I think it's awesome,
Yeah. Bring something new to the table, or at least try to. I mean, it's kind of like nothing's really new these days, but it is too. It's kind of like it can be new enough, I guess.
Oh, definitely. And yeah, it's like, just even if it's not exactly new or reinventing the wheel, it's very creative and very interesting to see people come up with this stuff,
Mm-hmm.
And that's just what I appreciate. I like people who put their all into it, and it's authentic, and it even if it's everything doesn't have to have a super deep meaning or this or that, but just mean what you play,
Yeah.
Not every song has to be, a Zeppelin ballad with insane lyrics and this and that, like it doesn't have to be serious, but as long as you're just, you're meaning it and you're authentic and you are excited to play it, that's what matters,
People can tell. People can feel that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and I feel like right now too, I have a son who's 17 and he plays in a band and he's into metal, and it's like I see like a resurgence too, like not even necessarily a resurgence, but just like the younger generation is like into metal, and it's like makes me so happy to see it.
Yeah, I do think it's kind of come full circle with the trends and things like that, and there's just something about it that I think people will always appreciate, because it's intense, it's passionate. I mean, seeing a live show is something that just, it can't be replicated, no matter the speaker system that you have, no matter what you can play music through, this and that. To me, nothing will ever compare to seeing human beings making noise, from a huge, concert venue style setting all the way to a dingy punk bar, and everything in between. It's amazing. And like I said, I mean, you can listen to music, you put your headphones on, you can have a speaker system in your house, all these things, but it never compares to seeing people play live, in my opinion.
Yeah, that collective experience is just so important too. Just like sharing it with other people too is part of it. Well, man, so the Unhealthy Mechanisms record comes out. When does it come out?
It'll be out on October 20th via Nuclear Blast. So
October 20th, and we got some singles out, Tumors, and a brand new one too, right?
Yeah, Desert Carnage, and there might be another one on the way. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that yet or not, but we'll just say it might be on the way.
Okay, cool. Well, October 20th is the day that Unhealthy Mechanism comes out, and we've been on for an hour, so we should probably wrap up. I'm sure you got other things to get to. Man, thank you so much for taking the time. Like I said, I have a ton of respect for your family and the things you're doing, and it's inspiring to see, as someone who has a son myself, it's inspiring to see you doing stuff with your father and stuff. And man, come back through and talk to me again when you're promoting something. You got a new tour, new record, anything.
Oh, absolutely, man. Thank you so much. It was definitely a pleasure from my end as well. It was a lot of fun.
Awesome, man. Appreciate it. And I'm gonna check out Kailasa too.
Yeah. Oh, please do. Go down the rabbit hole on all those bands I mentioned. They're all great.
Absolutely. Thank you, Igor. Take care of yourself.
Thank you. You too. Bye.
October 20th, Unhealthy Mechanisms.
Check it out. All right. Bye.
Take care, brother. All right. So that was Igor Amadeus Cavalera, Max Cavalera's son, talking about their band Go Ahead and Die. New record, Unhealthy Mechanisms, is out on October 20th. Check it out. It's heavy. Like he said, it's some of the most brutal stuff even his father said that he's worked on. And just a really cool conversation, really cool trajectory. And again, awesome stuff. We got Wednesday 13 coming up. We'll probably just run it live. So I'll see you again in a little while. Thanks for tuning in if you did. And you know the deal. Keep it brutal.